Hello folks, well if you're someone who isn't a fan of open world content in heroic dungeons in World of Warcraft, then the mini content drought is now over with the opening of the War Within's first season, and that may be just as well, as in the interim it's created plenty of space for some discussion and even drama in the community. The official launch of Season 1 this week came with the opening up of a bunch of extra content, including the new raid, Nerebar Palace, Mythic Zero dungeons, the new PvP season and higher tiers of delves. Unfortunately though, for Mythic Plus fans, the wait isn't quite over, as along with the return of Heroic Week, the launch of Mythic Plus is being delayed by an extra week. This longer than we are used to wait has been the subject of some discussion in the community, with a bit of a split emerging, with some folks complaining that there's not really much to do, while others are actually struggling to do all of the content that's available. While I personally have enjoyed the period of downtime, which had freed me up to enjoy much more of the more chill content in the War Within at my own pace, I do personally understand where these complaints about there not being much to do have come from. There is a sizable segment of the WoW player base who does not enjoy much, if any, of the open world content, and mostly just live for raiding or higher level Mythic Plus, and having a gap of well over a month without the content they enjoy most, especially in a game with a monthly sub, probably hasn't been the best of experiences. I'm not really sure that there's a perfect solution to this. For players who don't have the time to grind to 80 in a couple of days and who can finish their rounds of heroic dungeons in a couple more, an earlier opening of the raid and other content would create a lot of pressure and that feeling of falling behind. But at the same time, not having much to do isn't great either. The truth is that World of Warcraft's biggest strength, which is the wide variety of content and different playstyles it supports, is also a major weakness, and trying to satisfy every part of the player base at the same time is kind of a lose-lose situation for the WoW team. I'd be super interested in hearing from all of you about this subject, especially if you're a Mythic Plus fan or a raid logger who does not have the time that the full-time players do. Have you also found this wait to be too long, or are you just out there living your best life in the game? Let me know in the comments down below. Another thing that had been getting some discussion in the run-up to the new season was the very thorny subject of exploits and Blizzard's response to them. In recent seasons, the mantra "exploit early, exploit often" had become a bit of a meme, in part due to a sense that Blizzard had become a bit more reluctant to issue suspensions and rollbacks for exploiting unintended game mechanics. The risk, of course, of relying on a rule not being enforced is that the day it can always come when it does get enforced, and for some race to world first competitors who'd been using multi-boxing to exploit a delay in updating their account-wide stats to hugely accelerate their severed threads renown progress, that day came this week. On Monday, Blizzard started issuing 4-day suspensions to players who had somehow exploited this weakness, and a fair number of members of the 3 main Race to World First guilds were included. Blizzard also followed up in announcing to the Race to World First competitors that they plan to also roll back their renown progress. This very much feels to me to be a calculated warning shot by Blizzard that their seeming reluctance to take measures like this is coming to an end. The obvious implication being that if the Race to World First competitors do not self-regulate better, then the time could be coming where measures that will derail a guild's Race to World First campaign could be on the horizon. Personally, I don't think that allowing a situation where some competitors feel that they can blatantly exploit the game while others are still unwilling to do so is not good for the race's competitive integrity, and more firmly discouraging it should go a long way to level the playing field. Meanwhile, for those of us who are mere mortals, we were also able to jump into the new raid. My initial reaction to the raid is that the fights are very interesting and enjoyable, but the interior environment of the raid is a bit of an acquired taste. It's also quite challenging to navigate, and while we will no doubt get used to the layout, I have a suspicion that it will also end up being a bit annoying over time. Thankfully, navigation for Mythic Plus isn't going to be such a pain, as we're seeing the return of a Dragonflight Season 3 style portal room. The Mythic Plus key vendor Lindormi is making a return in a room just next to the upgrade vendor, and is offering a portal to the same Infinite Timeways area that we saw for Season 3, with portals to all of the non-War Within dungeons. Another new discovery for the season is that while tier tokens will be dropping from the raid in the usual way, they also have a small chance to drop as a Warband until equipped token as personal loot. In the early weeks, this could be quite a nice additional way to get tier for a main, as well as of course later on becoming a way to get alt set up with tier gear. And staying on the subject of tier, the Catalyst is also now back up and running along with its first charge, and we can expect to get new charges every 2 weeks. The Catalyst is located just outside the blacksmithing engineering building. Personally, I'm going to be waiting until I have a second charge before I even think about using the Catalyst. This early on gear just gets swapped out too quickly. For those of you who are not up to heroic raiding this week, probably the best source of gear is going to be Delves, with Mythic 0 gear limited to 592 veteran track for the end of dungeon and 603 champion for the vault. Delves will be offering the only other source to get at least one heroic gear piece. Completing a level 8 bountiful delve with a restored coffer key will award 603 item level champion gear and offer a 616 hero gear item from the vault. The latter does not even require it to be a bountiful delve. This has made delves a bit of a hot ticket this week, and it turns out that it's also become another source of community discussion. While I think that most folks were expecting that doing a delve in a group would be somewhat easier than soloing it, the difficulty gap has turned out to be much larger than I think anyone expected. Doing a level 8 delve as even a 2-man group was considerably easier, and it wasn't very long before the community did the math to explore why. Firstly, Wowhead demonstrated that enemy health less than doubles between a solo and a 5-man group, and then content creator Sloot found a similar pattern with enemy damage. Add in the fact that the death counter only counted releases, which meant that a group could res dead companions for free, and one kind of had to start questioning if delves were even realistically soloable. Blizzard did respond to this, announcing that group scaling was bugged and issuing a hotfix that significantly increased the scaling for group delves. While they did not announce any changes for solo difficulty, another hotfix did reduce the magic damage from enemies by 20%. And to address the issues with the death counter, it now does actually count deaths, albeit unlocking respawn points now refunds 1 life back. This set of changes, which significantly increased delve difficulty, as you can imagine, didn't go down at all well with the community. While no one ever complains about stuff getting easier, the opposite is true when it gets harder. Most players don't read hotfixes, and going from being able to do a level 8 delve with ease to being unable to complete the next really isn't a good experience. Given that level 8 delves drop similar gear to what a Mythic plus 5 to 7 will next week, I do think that the difficulty level of group delves was probably too low, and so I do think that increasing the difficulty was warranted, but it does create a situation where for some players the ability to get a hero track item in next week's vault now depends if they had time to work up to a level 8 delve before the hotfix was applied. The community of course did not hold back in expressing our displeasure about this state of affairs, and less than 24 hours later Blizzard announced that the changes had not, to use their words, had the desired effect, and made another round of changes to partially reduce the difficulty in groups. Given the complexity of World of Warcraft and the unpredictability of player behaviour, content like this is always going to need some post-launch tuning, but the difficulty gap between group and solo delves was, in my view, so large that it is something that could and should have been spotted by Blizzard in their own pre-launch testing, and there's no doubt in my mind that what has ended up to be quite a bad experience for many players is entirely down to gaps in Blizzard's testing of this feature. Given the exceptionally smooth launch of the War Within, it's especially disappointing for me as a player to see what is a major back-of-the-box feature having an issue like this, and I do hope the dev team do take some time to try and learn the necessary lessons from it. This wasn't the only issue with delves. After some players managed to push Bran's levels much further than intended, in the pre-season Blizzard had announced a pre-season cap at level 15, along with some rollbacks of Bran. With the launch of the new season, that cap has been lifted. However, it is worth being aware that Bran now only levels up in bountiful delves, and at least at the time of recording this, it appears that he is being capped at level 38. It's unclear if this new cap is a bug or perhaps just a heroic week cap, which will end up being lifted next week. Moving away from the live game, this week we also saw a fresh build for the 1105 PTR, and the ever-vigilant Wowhead have now data mined the anniversary buff, which includes a bit of a hint about the timing of the event. The buff in question indicates that the event will probably run from October 22nd through to January 4th, which is somewhat in line with the timescales that Blizzard had hinted at in their announcement. Now, as with any data mining, this is not official. Things like this can and sometimes do change, but for what it's worth, the 22nd is 8 weeks after the full release of The War Within, which means it does fit very well with our 8-week release cycle that we became used to. This may also hint towards an early January release for the next patch after 11.05. Counting 8 weeks from October the 22nd gives us the 17th of December, but given how close to Christmas that is, and the lack of any mention of a post-11.05 patch in the 2024 roadmap, and my thinking is that most likely that follow-up patch will land very early in January, possibly as soon as January the 6th. The anniversary event isn't the only holiday we've got to look forward to. We've a bunch of new holidays which I actually want to give you a little bit reminder about just now. The Harvest Festival is now active and runs through to Thursday the 19th. While this event doesn't have a huge amount in the way of gameplay, it is pretty useful if you're leveling up alts. Head over to the event tables outside Ironforge or Orgrimmar and you can pick up 3 stacks of 20 food. This food automatically scales with your level, which makes it super useful when leveling characters with low self-sustain, like rogues or shadow priests, which sometimes need to stop and eat as you go. I personally have all of my characters pick up these supplies. You never know when they may come in handy, and it only takes a few minutes per character. Thursday the 19th also sees Pirates Day. This single day micro holiday has a bunch of rewards, including a cool dragon appearance and a few toys that can only be bought that one day a year. Just be warned that the pirates like their gold. These are not cheap to buy. Finally, on Friday the 20th, we see the start of Brewfest, which is probably the most fun holiday in the calendar. If you haven't done it before, this one does contribute to the holiday meta achievement What a Long Strange Trip It's Been, which awards the Violet Protodrake. This event has a fun ram racing minigame along with the Corin Dyer Brew dungeon encounter that offers you a chance at not one but 2 mounts, the Great Brewfest Kodo and the Swift Brewfest Ram. These mounts are unusual as it's one of the very few rams that are available to Horde players, or indeed Kodos that are available to Alliance. Given the timing of these events, I'm personally not expecting any major revamps this year, but given the team's efforts to revamp other holidays, I'd personally not completely rule out the possibility entirely. Anyways, that's all for this week's update. If you found this update interesting or useful, then do make sure to let both me and YouTube know by hitting that like icon. And if you'd like to support my channel, by far the best way to do that is by subscribing. And do make sure to hit the bell icon to be notified whenever a new video goes live. All of your interactions with my channel help to send YouTube a positive signal that my video is worth showing to more viewers, as does watching all the way through to the end. All of this helps smaller channels like mine grow, and it all means the world to me. I'll be back with more news, guides, reviews and opinions before you know it. That's all for now. Thanks for watching.